Texas, 1939. The dust storms had finally settled, but the Great Depression still had its grip on the nation. In the small town of San Angelo, the news of the Martinez Sisters' inheritance spread like wildfire through the parched streets. Maria and Elena Martinez stood on the porch of what was now their property, a Victorian mansion that seemed out of place among the modest homes of West Texas. The sisters, both in their early 20s, had been working at a textile factory in San Antonio when they received word that their estranged uncle had passed away, leaving them his entire estate. "I barely remember Uncle Francisco," Maria said, her dark eyes studying the weathered facade of the house. At 24, she was the elder sister, always practical and reserved. Mama never spoke of him after he left for California. Elena, 2 years younger, more impulsive and curious, ran her fingers along the ornate railing. "They say he made a fortune in the oil business. But why would he leave everything to us? We haven't seen him since we were children." The lawyer who had delivered the news, Mr. Blackwood, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual frown, now approached them with a ring of keys. "Ladies, as I mentioned, your uncle was eccentric. He had no children of his own and had fallen out with most of the family. You were his only living relatives." "What happened to him?" Elena asked. Mr. Blackwood's expression tightened. "Heart failure, according to the doctor. He was found in his study." He hesitated. "There are some conditions to the inheritance. You must live in the house for at least 1 year before you can sell it or any of its contents." Maria frowned. "We have jobs in San Antonio. Your uncle was quite generous. There's a substantial monthly allowance for both of you during this period." He handed them an envelope. "This should cover your immediate needs." Elena peeked inside and gasped. It contained more money than they would make in 6 months at the factory. "The house has been closed up for some time," Mr. Blackwood continued. "Your uncle spent his final months here after returning from California. His housekeeper, Mrs. Reyes, comes in 3 times a week. She'll be here tomorrow morning." After Mr. Blackwood left, the sisters entered their new home. The air inside was stale and heavy, smelling of tobacco and something else, something medicinal and sharp. Sheets covered the furniture like shrouds, and dust motes danced in the streams of light cutting through the partially closed curtains. "It's like a museum," Elena whispered, pulling a sheet off an ornate sofa. "Look at this furniture." Maria was more interested in the practicalities. "Let's check the kitchen and bedrooms. We need to know what we're dealing with." The kitchen was surprisingly modern, with an electric refrigerator and stove. The pantry was well stocked with canned goods. Upstairs, they found 4 bedrooms, all furnished with heavy, dark wood pieces that must have cost a fortune. "I'll take this one," Elena said, entering a room with a large bay window overlooking the garden. She opened the closet and found it empty, except for a single wooden box on the shelf. "Look, Maria." The box contained photographs, dozens of them, spanning decades. The sisters recognized their mother as a young woman, standing with a handsome man they assumed was their uncle. In some photos, there were other family members they didn't recognize. "Strange," Maria said, frowning at one particular photograph. It showed their uncle standing in front of the house, but something about it seemed off. "Do you see that?" Elena peered closer. In the corner of the photograph, partially hidden in shadow, was what looked like a pale hand reaching toward their uncle. But it didn't seem connected to anyone in the picture. "It's probably just a smudge," Elena said, though she didn't sound convinced. They continued unpacking until dusk, when the house grew dark and the old electric lights cast long shadows across the walls. Maria prepared a simple dinner from the canned goods, and they ate in silence, both overwhelmed by the sudden change in their circumstances. That night, Maria was awakened by a sound, soft at first, then more insistent, tap, 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 like fingernails against glass. She sat up, listening. The sound seemed to be coming from Elena's room. She found her sister standing by the window, staring out into the darkness. "Did you hear that?" Maria asked. "There's someone in the garden," Eleanor replied, her voice oddly flat. A woman. Maria looked out but saw nothing except the shadowy outlines of trees and shrubs. There's no one there, Elena. Come back to bed. It's late. But Elena remained by the window until Maria physically guided her back to bed. As she closed the curtains, Maria thought she saw a flicker of movement in the garden below, but convinced herself it was just the wind in the trees. The next morning, Mrs. Reyes arrived, a stout Mexican woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She seemed surprised to see them. "So you are Francisco's nieces," she said, studying their faces. "You have his eyes." She crossed herself quickly. God rest his soul. "Did you work for our uncle for a long time?" Eleanor asked, helping the woman unpack her cleaning supplies. 5 years. Since he came back from California." Mrs. Reyes hesitated. "He was a good man, but troubled, especially toward the end." "Troubled how?" Maria asked. Mrs. Reyes busied herself with arranging her supplies. "He had difficulty sleeping, said he heard things in the night, saw things that weren't there." She looked at them directly. "Have you been in the study yet?" They hadn't. The door to the study had been locked, and they hadn't found the key among the ones Mr. Blackwood had given them. "Your uncle spent most of his time there. Said he was organizing his affairs." She reached into her pocket and handed Maria a key. "You should see it. But perhaps it's better if I am with you." The study was at the end of the hallway on the first floor. The heavy oak door swung open with a creak, revealing a room lined with bookshelves. A massive desk dominated the center, its surface covered with papers, books, and more photographs. But what immediately drew their attention were the walls. Every available space was covered with photographs, hundreds of them, all family pictures spanning generations. Some were formal portraits, others casual snapshots. They recognized their mother in many of them, and themselves as small children in a few. "He collected them," Mrs. Reyes explained. "Wrote to relatives all over the country, asking for copies of family photographs. Said he was creating a family tree." Eleanor moved closer to examine the photos. "They're organized by family branch," she noted. "Here's Mama's line." She pointed to a section of the wall where their mother's image appeared repeatedly over the years. Maria was looking at the desk, where a leather-bound journal lay open. The handwriting was crabbed and hurried, difficult to read. She caught phrases, "appears again in the Hernandez portrait," and "always in the corner, always reaching." "Your uncle became obsessed with these photographs," Mrs. Reyes said quietly. "Said he was seeing patterns no one else noticed." Elena suddenly gasped. "Maria, look at this." She was pointing to a photograph of their mother's wedding. In the corner of the image, partially obscured by shadow, was a pale hand, the same disembodied hand they had noticed in the photo of their uncle. "And here," Eleanor said, moving to another photo. This one showed a family gathering from the 1920s. Again, in the corner, the same ghostly hand. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. "Mrs. Reyes, do you know what this means?" The housekeeper crossed herself again. "Your uncle believed the family was haunted. He said there was a presence in every family photograph, growing clearer over time. That's why he came back to Texas, to research the family history, to find out who it was." "Did he?" Maria asked. Mrs. Reyes shook her head. "He died before he could tell me, but he was frightened at the end. Said the presence had found him." That night, after Mrs. Reyes had gone, the sisters sat in the kitchen trying to make sense of what they had discovered. "It's nonsense," Maria said firmly. "Photography wasn't perfect back then. Light leaks, double exposures. There are plenty of explanations for strange marks on old photographs." "Then why was Uncle Francisco so afraid?" Elena countered. "Why did he spend his final months collecting these photos, making notes?" "Because he was eccentric, like Mr. Blackwood said. Probably lonely and a little senile." Elena wasn't convinced. "I'm going to look through his journal. Maybe he discovered something." "Elena, no. We should respect his privacy. He's dead, Maria. And he left everything to us. Don't you want to know why?" Before Maria could respond, the lights flickered, then went out, plunging the house into darkness. Outside, the wind had picked up, howling around the eaves. "Perfect timing," Maria muttered, fumbling for matches to light the kerosene lamp they had found earlier. "The wiring in this old house must be faulty." In the wavering lamplight, Elena's face looked strained. "Did you hear that?" "What?" "Tapping, like fingernails on glass." Maria listened but heard nothing except the wind. "It's just the storm. Come on, let's find more lamps." They made their way through the darkened house, lighting lamps as they went. When they reached the study, Maria hesitated. In the darkness, the photographs on the walls seemed to watch them, hundreds of frozen faces from the past. "Let's get the journal and go back to the kitchen," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. But as Elena approached the desk, the lamp she was holding suddenly flared brightly, then went out. In the momentary flash, they both saw it. A pale figure standing in the corner of the room, one hand outstretched toward them. Elena screamed. Maria grabbed her sister's arm and pulled her out of the study, slamming the door behind them. They ran to the kitchen, where the other lamp still burned steadily. "You saw it too," Elena gasped, her face ashen. "The hand, just like in the photographs." Maria wanted to deny it, to find a rational explanation. But the image was burned into her mind, the pale, translucent figure reaching for them with an expression of desperate yearning. "We need to leave," Elena said. "Now, tonight." "We can't," Maria reminded her. "The inheritance. We need to stay for a year." "Is money worth our lives? We don't know that we're in danger. Ghost stories aren't real, Elena." But even as she said it, Maria remembered the fear in her uncle's writing. The obsessive collection of photographs, all showing the same spectral hand reaching out from the shadows. That night, neither sister slept. They sat in Maria's room, the lamp burning between them, listening to the storm rage outside and the house creak and settle around them. Sometime after midnight, the tapping began again, more insistent this time, like someone desperately trying to get their attention. "It's coming from the study," Eleanor whispered. Maria nodded. Despite her skepticism, she could no longer deny that something strange was happening in the house. "Tomorrow we'll go through Uncle Francisco's journal. Maybe he found answers before he died." But as dawn broke and grey light filtered through the windows, they discovered that the journal was missing from the desk. The disappearance of the journal convinced Maria that someone else was involved, someone very much alive who had access to the house. Her immediate suspicion fell on Mrs. Reyes, who had been their uncle's confidant during his final months. "She knows more than she's telling us," Maria said as they prepared breakfast. The storm had passed, and in the bright morning light, last night's terror seemed almost like a bad dream. "Do you think she took the journal?" Eleanor asked, still pale and shaken from their night of fear. "It's possible. Or maybe Mr. Blackwood. We hardly know anything about either of them." Mrs. Reyes arrived at 10, carrying a basket of fresh bread and fruit. "The electricity is often unreliable during storms," she said, noticing the lamps still out on the kitchen table. "There are candles in the pantry next time." Maria watched the housekeeper carefully as she worked, looking for any sign of guilt or deception. But Mrs. Reyes moved through her tasks with the same efficiency as before. Finally, Eleanor broached the subject. "Mrs. Reyes, we can't find our uncle's journal, the one that was on his desk yesterday." The older woman paused in her sweeping. "It's gone?" "Yes, and we had an experience last night. We saw something in the study." Mrs. Reyes's expression darkened. "What did you see?" "A figure," Maria admitted reluctantly, "pale, like a shadow, but with a hand reaching out. The same hand that appears in the photographs." Mrs. Reyes crossed herself. "Your uncle saw it too, toward the end. Said it was getting closer each time." "Who is it?" Eleanor asked. "Did he know?" The housekeeper hesitated, then sighed heavily. "He had theories. The journal contained his research." She glanced toward the window, as if checking that they were alone. "There is another place he kept records, in the basement." "This house has a basement?" Maria asked, surprised. Mrs. Reyes nodded. The entrance is in the pantry, behind the shelves. Sure enough, in the pantry, they found a concealed door behind a movable shelf unit. It opened onto a narrow staircase, leading down into darkness. "Your uncle spent many hours down there," Mrs. Reyes said, lighting a candle. "I haven't been down since he died." The basement was cooler than the rest of the house, the air heavy with the smell of damp earth and old paper. Mrs. Reyes led them to a small room at the back, where a table was covered with maps, old letters, and more photographs, these older and more faded than the ones upstairs. "This is where he did his research," she explained, tracing the family history back to the original settlement. The walls were covered with a large family tree, meticulously drawn and annotated. Maria traced the lines with her finger, finding their mother's name and their own at the bottom of one branch. "Here," Elena said, pointing to a name near the top of the tree. "Isabella Martinez, 1857–1876. There's a note, first appearance." Next to the name was a small, faded photograph, one of the earliest in the collection. It showed a solemn family group, and in the corner, barely visible, was the now familiar pale hand. "Your uncle believed it was Isabella," Mrs. Reyes said quietly. "The hand in the photographs." "But who was she?" Maria asked. "What happened to her?" Mrs. Reyes picked up a yellowed newspaper clipping from the table. "She was murdered. Her body was found in the well behind this house." Elena gasped. "This house? But it can't be that old." "The original structure burned in 1890. This house was built on the same foundation." Mrs. Reyes handed them the clipping. "Isabella was engaged to be married, but she disappeared a week before the wedding. When they found her body, her wedding ring had been taken." Maria read the faded article. According to the report, Isabella's fiancé had been the main suspect, but was never charged due to lack of evidence. He later married another woman and became a prominent businessman in the area. "Your uncle believed Isabella was trying to communicate through the photographs," Mrs. Reyes continued, "that she was reaching out to her family, trying to reveal the truth about her death. That's why he collected all the family photographs," Elena realized. "He was tracking her appearances." Maria was still skeptical, but why would she wait so long? Why not reveal herself to her parents or siblings? "The journal might have had the answer," Mrs. Reyes said. "Your uncle made a discovery in his final week. He was excited but wouldn't tell me what it was. Said he needed to confirm it first." The three women spent the rest of the day going through Francisco's research. They found letters from distant relatives, historical records of the Martinez family dating back to their arrival in Texas in the 1830s, and dozens more photographs, all showing the same spectral hand in the corner. As dusk fell, Mrs. Reyes prepared to leave. "Be careful tonight," she warned. "The presence seems stronger after dark." "Will you stay?" Eleanor asked, a note of pleading in her voice. "Just for tonight?" But Mrs. Reyes shook her head. "I have my own family waiting. Lock the doors, and perhaps—" She hesitated. "Perhaps speak to her. Isabella. Ask her what she wants." After the housekeeper left, the sisters prepared a simple dinner, neither wanting to acknowledge the growing dread they felt as darkness enveloped the house. "We should go through the photographs again," Elena suggested as they washed the dishes. "Look for patterns like Uncle Francisco did." They returned to the study, which seemed less threatening with all the lamps lit. Working methodically, they began examining each photograph, noting the date and the clarity of the spectral hand. "It does get clearer over time," Maria admitted. "In the earliest photos, it's just a smudge. By the 1920s, you can see distinct fingers. And in the most recent ones, you can see part of an arm, even a suggestion of a face," Eleanor added, pointing to a family portrait from 1935. They worked late into the night, creating their own timeline of appearances. By midnight, they had confirmed what their uncle had noted. The presence was growing stronger, more defined, with each passing decade. But why our family? Maria wondered. Isabella was murdered by her fiancé, not by a relative. Maybe it wasn't her fiancé, Elena suggested. Maybe it was someone in the family, and the truth was covered up. Maria was about to respond when the lights flickered, then went out completely. Unlike the previous night, there was no storm. The air outside was still and quiet. "The candles," Maria said, reaching for the matches. But before she could light one, they heard it. The familiar tapping, this time coming from all around them, as if every photograph on the walls was vibrating with a desperate rhythm. In the darkness, Elena's voice trembled. "Isabella, is that you?" The tapping stopped abruptly. Then, in the silence, they heard something else. A soft, whispering sound, like someone trying to speak from very far away. Maria finally managed to light a candle. The flame illuminated the study in a small circle of warm light, casting long shadows across the walls of photographs. "We want to help you," Elena said to the empty air. "Tell us what you need." The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, the candle flame bending as if in a draught. Then, on the desk, pages began turning in one of the old ledgers. Slowly at first, then faster, finally stopping at a specific page. Maria approached cautiously, holding the candle above the book. It was a record of property transactions from the 1870s. One entry was underlined in faded ink. "Transfer of deed, Lot 17, Willow Creek Road, from Martinez Estate to Edward Blackwood, January 1877. "Blackwood," Elena whispered, "like our lawyer." Before they could process this information, the candle went out, plunging them into darkness again. And in that darkness, they both saw it clearly. The figure of a young woman in a white dress, her hair long and dark, one hand reaching toward them. Her face was sorrowful, her eyes fixed on something behind them. Elena screamed. Maria turned to see what the apparition was looking at, and found Mr. Blackwood standing in the doorway, a gun in his hand. "I knew you would be trouble," he said calmly. "Just like your uncle." "Mr. Blackwood," Maria said, trying to keep her voice steady, "what are you doing here?" "Protecting my family's interests." He stepped into the room, the gun unwavering. "Your uncle was getting too close to the truth. I had hoped his death would end it, but then he left everything to you two." "The truth about Isabella?" Elena asked, her eyes darting between Blackwood and the now fading apparition. "My great-grandfather didn't kill her," Blackwood said. "He was accused, yes, but he was innocent." His eyes gleamed in the darkness. "It was her brother who did it, Antonio Martinez. He disapproved of the marriage, and afterward my great-grandfather bought this property for almost nothing from the disgraced family." Maria suddenly understood. "That's why she's reaching out in the photographs. She's pointing at your family." Blackwood's smile was cold. "A charming ghost story, but ghosts can't testify in court, can they? Your uncle thought he could use this phenomenon to challenge my family's claim to several valuable properties in the area, properties that once belonged to the Martinez family." "So you killed him," Elena said, horror dawning on her face. "Heart failure, like I told you, easily induced with the right substances." He gestured with the gun. "Now where is the journal? Your uncle's final proof?" "We don't have it," Maria said truthfully. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll have to look for it together. Move into the hallway." As they stepped into the darkened hallway, Maria caught a glimpse of something. A faint, luminous figure at the end of the corridor, near the entrance to the basement. "Eleanor," she whispered, "follow my lead." Blackwood prodded them with the gun. "To the kitchen. If the journal isn't upstairs, it must be in his basement workshop." As they moved toward the kitchen, the spectral figure remained just ahead of them, always at the edge of visibility. Maria was certain now that Isabella was trying to lead them somewhere. In the kitchen, Blackwood ordered them to open the concealed door to the basement. "Ladies first," he said with a mocking bow. The basement was pitch black. As they descended the stairs, Maria felt a cold draught brush past her, and suddenly the ghostly figure of Isabella was beside them, her expression urgent, one hand pointing deeper into the darkness. "What is it?" Eleanor whispered, apparently able to see the apparition as well. "Quiet!" Blackwood snapped, fumbling with a flashlight. "No tricks. But as the beam of light cut through the darkness, they all saw it, the ghost of Isabella, now fully materialized, standing by the far wall of the basement. Her hand was no longer reaching, but pointing directly at a specific stone in the wall. Blackwood's face drained of color. "Impossible," he muttered. Taking advantage of his shock, Maria lunged, knocking the gun from his hand. It clattered to the floor as Elena scrambled to retrieve it. "Stay back!" Elena shouted, pointing the weapon at Blackwood with shaking hands. Ignoring the struggling lawyer, Maria moved to the wall where Isabella's ghost had indicated. One stone seemed looser than the others. She pried it free and reached into the cavity behind it. Her fingers closed around a small metal box. Inside was a folded document and a ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond. "Isabella's wedding ring," she breathed, "the one that was stolen from her body." The document was a confession, dated 1876 and signed by Edward Blackwood, the lawyer's great-grandfather. In it, he admitted to murdering Isabella after she discovered his embezzlement of her family's funds. He had framed her brother for the crime, then used the resulting scandal to acquire the family's properties at a fraction of their worth. "Your uncle found this," Maria realized, looking at Blackwood. "That's why you killed him." Blackwood's expression was a mixture of rage and fear. "A forged document and a worthless ring. It proves nothing. It's enough to raise questions about your family's claim to those properties," Eleanor said, the gun now steady in her hands. "Enough to warrant an investigation." As if in response, the house around them creaked and settled, and they felt a subtle shift in the air, as if something that had been trapped for decades was finally free. Dawn broke over San Angelo, bathing the Victorian mansion in golden light. Outside, Sheriff Cooper and his deputies were taking statements from Maria and Eleanor, while Mr. Blackwood sat handcuffed in the back of a police car, his face a mask of cold fury. "So you're saying Blackwood admitted to killing your uncle?" the sheriff asked, his weathered face skeptical beneath his hat. "Yes," Maria answered firmly. "He thought we had found proof that his great-grandfather murdered Isabella Martinez in 1876 and framed her brother for the crime. And this proof was hidden in your basement wall." The sheriff's tone made it clear what he thought of the story. Eleanor stepped forward, holding out the metal box they had found. "See for yourself. A confession signed by Edward Blackwood and Isabella's missing wedding ring." Sheriff Cooper examined the yellow document and the ring. "This is mighty strange, but it might explain some things. The Blackwood family has controlled half the county for 3 generations, starting with land they acquired from the Martinez estate in the 1870s. Our uncle was researching the family history," Maria explained. "He discovered that Isabella's ghost was trying to reveal the truth about her murder through family photographs." At this, the sheriff's skepticism returned. "Ghost, you say?" "I know how it sounds," Maria said, "but we've seen her, and there's evidence in the photographs." She showed him several of the family pictures, pointing out the pale hand visible in the corner of each one. Sheriff Cooper studied them with a frown. "Could be a camera defect," he suggested. "In hundreds of different photographs taken over 60 years with different cameras," Elena challenged. The sheriff handed the pictures back. "I'm not saying I believe in ghosts, ladies, but I do believe Blackwood had motive to kill your uncle if he thought his family fortune was at risk, and his breaking in here last night with a gun is enough for me to hold him." After the sheriff and his men left with Blackwood, Mrs. Reyes arrived, her face anxious. "I heard what happened. Are you both all right?" "We're fine," Maria assured her. "Better than fine. We found the proof Uncle Francisco was looking for." They showed her the confession and the ring. Mrs. Reyes crossed herself. "Isabella can rest now. The truth is out." "But how did the journal disappear?" Elena wondered. "Blackwood said he didn't take it." Mrs. Reyes looked uncomfortable. "I took it," she admitted, "after you went to bed that first night. I was afraid of what might happen if you learned too much, too quickly." She reached into her bag and handed them the leather-bound journal. "Your uncle wrote everything down. His research, his theories, even his conversations with Isabella. Conversations, Maria echoed. Toward the end, he said she was able to communicate with him, not just through the photographs, but directly. He would sit in the study at night and speak with her. That evening, after Mrs. Reyes had gone, the sisters sat in the study, reading their uncle's journal by lamplight. His neat handwriting grew increasingly erratic in the later entries, documenting his growing obsession with Isabella's case and his fear of Blackwood's suspicions. The final entry, dated just 2 days before his death, read, "Isabella showed me where the proof is hidden. Tomorrow I will retrieve it and take it to the authorities. Blackwood suspects something. He asked too many questions about my research today. I must be careful." "He never got the chance," Elena said softly, closing the journal. "Blackwood poisoned him that night." Maria nodded, looking around at the walls of photographs. "Do you think Isabella is still here, now that the truth is known?" As if in answer, the air in the room seemed to shift, growing warmer, more peaceful. On the wall, in the most recent family photograph, one taken at their mother's birthday the previous year, they noticed something different. The ghostly hand that had been reaching from the corner was gone. In the months that followed, the case against Blackwood became a sensation throughout Texas. The discovery of the 1876 confession led to investigations into the Blackwood family's property holdings, revealing decades of fraud and corruption. Many of the properties, including large tracts of oil-rich land, were eventually returned to the descendants of the original owners. As the legal heirs of Isabella Martinez, Maria and Elena found themselves not just with their uncle's inheritance, but with a significant portion of the reclaimed Blackwood properties as well. By the end of 1940, they were among the wealthiest landowners in the county, but wealth wasn't what mattered most to them. As they had promised Sheriff Cooper, they used some of their fortune to establish a historical society dedicated to preserving the true stories of the region's families, ensuring that voices like Isabella's would never again be silenced. They kept the Victorian mansion, transforming it from a place of shadows and secrets into a warm, welcoming home. Mrs. Reyes stayed on as their housekeeper and friend, helping them host community gatherings and family reunions where the true story of Isabella Martinez and the ghostly hand in the photographs became a kind of local legend. On the anniversary of their uncle's death, the sisters held a special memorial service in the garden. As dusk fell and candles were lit, Maria thought she saw, just for a moment, 2 figures standing beneath the old oak tree, a young woman in a white dress and an older man with kind eyes. They seemed to be watching the gathering with peaceful expressions before slowly fading into the gathering darkness. "Do you think they found each other?" Eleanor asked softly, following her sister's gaze. "I think they found justice," Maria replied, "and maybe that's what both of them needed to rest." That night, as the sisters prepared for bed, Elena paused by the study door. "Have you noticed? None of the new photographs have any strange marks or shadows." It was true. Since Blackwood's arrest and the discovery of the confession, every photograph taken in the house or of the Martinez family had been clear and ordinary. No reaching hands, no pale figures in the corners. "I think Isabella's finally at peace," Maria said. As if to confirm her words, they felt a gentle breeze move through the house, though all the windows were closed against the autumn chill. It carried the faint scent of roses, Isabella's favorite flower, according to their uncle's journal. In the study, on the desk where they had left their uncle's journal, the pages suddenly began to turn, as if moved by invisible fingers. They stopped at the very last page where Francisco had written his final entry. Beneath it, in a delicate hand neither sister recognized, appeared new words glistening wetly as if just written, "Thank you, be happy, remember." By morning the words had vanished, leaving only the journal as it had been, but the sisters knew what they had seen. And from that day forward, Though they sometimes thought they felt a protective presence in the old house, the ghostly hand never again appeared in any Martinez family photograph. Instead, their pictures showed only smiling faces, new generations, and the bright future that Isabella's long quest for justice had finally made possible. In 1959, 20 years after they had first inherited the house, Maria and Elena donated the complete collection of photographs and their uncle's journal to the Texas State Historical Society, where researchers continue to study them to this day. Some claim to see the ghostly hand in the old photographs, others dismiss it as a peculiarity of early photographic techniques. But in San Angelo, the story of the Martinez sisters and the ghost who reached through time to reveal the truth is still told. And sometimes visitors to the Historical Society report feeling a gentle touch on their shoulder as they view the photographs, as if someone is still there, watching, remembering, making sure her story is never forgotten.